All right. So my name is Marcia Hilger. I'm an instructor at Rancho San Juan High School. I teach French 1, 2, 3, AP, and this year I'll also be teaching Avid. And today we're going to discuss and have you make at least one chat mat to facilitate meaningful classroom discussions with your students. So I have shared the presentation in the chat. Let me know if I need to resend it. Just pin it. Okay. Oh, there was a little pin. How exciting. Oh, how lovely. Okay. Coming back from summer vacation. Okay, so I pinned it. Hopefully you can see it at the top of the chat. If not, please do let me know. Great. Okay. All right. So as from the slide deck that we can see here, you've got the tiny URL, fabulous. And you've got the sign-in link to get paid. That's one of the most important items. And then this, just letting you know, our session is recorded so that you can come back into the link within the summer symposium and replay anything that you would like. All right, so let's get started here. So our session norms, thank you so much. You're all doing wonderfully with muting for the duration of the training. Obviously, we're going to participate positively. Please do add your questions to the chat. I'll be checking it periodically, but definitely parking lotting some of those questions until we finish with the presentation part. Please do remain focused, and in case you have technical difficulty, please just carry on the best that you can, or if you need to log out and log back in, that is fine too. Okay. All right, so what are we going to do? So by the end of this session, you should be able to explain how chat mats assist students in engaging in more fruitful academic conversations, which we all want. Identify the essential elements that go into a chat mat. Discern which type of DOK level of questioning is best for the particular unit that you're on, and then developing some response frames to help students answer those questions with that academic vocabulary. And then we're going to use Google Drawing, or you can choose Google Slides or Canva, whichever material works best for you, with the website Flat Icon to create a thematic chat mat for your specific grade level that you teach and the specific unit that you want to go into. All right, so in this slide, you'll see it has a cute little house on the left-hand side by contents, and you'll see on the subsequent slides in the lower right-hand corner is that same icon, so it can always bring you back to the table of contents. So we're going to go over some basics. I'm going to show you a couple examples I use with my students. Then we'll do our mise en place. We'll get out our essential materials to play together, and then I'm just going to walk you through an overview of how are you going to plan for your content first, and then how are you going to design the chat mat for your students to use. I've also got a couple of examples in various subjects, so I know we're not all French teachers on this call, so you can kind of see how you could use it in other core areas. And then I've given you some templates to start with that already include some of the frames, so you don't always have to insert those in Google Drawings, and you can start to play around with your own content. And there's some bonus resources. Okay, so why are we here? Why are these useful? So my Japanese colleague, Sensei Kimimura, and I conducted a PDSA cycle with Madame Lopez at Rancho San Juan this past spring, because we found that our students, especially our juniors and seniors, they are tested for their speaking skills in order to qualify for the seal of biliteracy. And in order to engage in those upper level conversations, they needed a little bit more support in practicing with their academic conversation. So one of those ideas that we did implement this past semester were chat mats, and we had very positive feedback from our students on it. How you can use it in other classes, all of us have ELL students that may struggle with some of the academic vocabulary and or framework to really engage in a college level conversation. So it gives them a visual reminder to participate more consistently. And last but not least, I do have some students that are very shy. I have students that are still kind of buried in their cell phones. And so to ask them to put everything away and engage in a conversation, they told me is actually intimidating because they're not used to having face-to-face conversations, and especially when you're asking them to analyze academic topics. They said they don't want to feel silly amongst their peers. So having something to just kind of look down on and kind of jog their memory helped reduce anxiety for a lot of those students. So that's how they are useful. What are the precepts of a chat mat? Well, it only covers one side of a sheet of paper or a slide. You're going to lay it out landscape version like a placemat. And there should be your discussion questions at the top, some sentence starters or sentence frames for your students to answer with. And then it should include some icons and visuals so they can track. And if you'd like, you can include some elaboration. All right, this is one of my juniors from French that said, what I liked most about the chat mat was that it had sentence starters and other questions to ask when we couldn't think of something right away. It's a tool we can use to make our conversation smoother and get us to talk, which is what we want. All right. Okay, so here's a French 1 example on family. You can see that it actually goes from left to right, and I rainbow colored them on purpose. On the left-hand side on the pink, it's going to start with our lower levels, right? Identifying family members. Then they're going to describe them, personality, physical appearance, talk a little about what they do on the weekend. And then my upper levels are going to use their conditional present tense in order to engage in hypotheses, to give advice, to really detail traditions that are important to them and their family, what those traditions are, when it happens, and why it's important to them. And then down below in that purple box are some elaboration elements in order to form more complex academic sentences. So that's one way to do it. There's no right or wrong way to put this together. I just want to give you some examples. So that's French 1. This would be something for like my French level 2, level 3. So we're talking sophomores, juniors here. You can see it's a lot more wordy. There's a lot more vocabulary on the page, and the questions are a little bit more in depth. So I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. You've got it translated, but you can see I've separated a little bit differently where they have their discussion questions at the top, vocabulary to jog their memories, some sentence frames to start to answer those questions. And then sometimes they tell me they do need their W questions, right? The who, where, why type questions, so that they can continue to engage and ask for more clarification with their group members. And then just a few ideas for elaboration down in the purple box. And then at the very bottom in the left-hand corner, for me, I just have our California state standards are based on our national standards. So I have that standard listed so that they know where they are at in their spectrum of being able to produce language. Okay, so you can see that those two were quite different. All right, ooh, we're almost ready to play, so here we go. All right, so mise en place, your materials. You've got your computer, obviously, Google Drive in order to store what you're gonna make today, some form of tool in order to create your placemat or your chat mat. So if you like Canva, fabulous. I prefer Google Drawings because it gives me a little more flexibility in adding word art and then in spacing out and snapping the shapes together so that they're in alignment. But you could do Google Docs, you could do Google Slides, that's up to you. Then we're gonna work with flat icon, and on your particular copy of this slide, when you hover, it should turn into a little hand. Otherwise, you can open up a separate tab and you just type in flaticon.com. All right, and then and I'll show you what flat icon looks like here in just a moment. And then this one, let me see if I can open this one for you. Underneath the question marks, there we go. There we go. Once you click those question marks, yes, you should see, this comes from Avid, but just some open-ended, you can see your different levels of question, your identification, your analysis, and then your hypotheticals. So level 1, level 2, level 3. There's some for English down here. Voila. So you've got English, you've got some for math, you've got some for science, social studies, science and math, English and social studies. So what if that's a tool that will help you jog your memory for some of these questions that you'd like to use, that is here when you click the link for these question marks. Okay. All right, so the first thing we need to think about is content, right? So we want to have this kind of together in our minds before we do the design. So what topic do you want your students to discuss for this go around? What kind of questions are best going to analyze this topic? And be sure to include different DOK levels, right? Depth of knowledge questions. Then which sentence frames, when they go to respond, best support those responses. And then include synonyms where you can in the responses. I know at least for the French exams, our students are actually marked down on their exams for using the exact same vocabulary in the responses. So getting them to use academic vocabulary that includes synonyms is putting them on the right track. And then how can students elaborate on their reasoning if they say they finished early and it's like, are you sure that you used the elaboration box in order to really dig deep into the content? All right. If you're like me and you've come back from summer break and the brain is getting dusted off, you may, if you like, use an AI chatbot to help you with this as well. So I've just given you the prompts that I've put into a chatbot like ChatGPT, or I like using Bing Copilot. You can ask it, especially Bing Copilot, since it uses the internet, to go out and familiarize itself with the Costas levels of inquiry for the questions, with the different depth of knowledge questions. Make sure it has something to start with so it knows what you're going to be talking about. And then you're going to tell it to create 2 student discussion questions from that about whatever your topic is. Look through your questions, see if you like them, or you can ask it for more questions if you don't. Once you have the questions that you like, then you're going to tell it to create student response frames from those above questions that it gives you. So you look through that. That will go in your chat mat. And then if you like, you can tell it to provide 3 questions for students to elaborate on the topic. So if you're needing some brainstorming ideas, I think using Bing Copilot or OpenAI's ChatGPT can help you with some brainstorming there as well. All right. So at this moment, let me check the chat for just a second. Oh, très bien. Okay. Excellent. Looks like we're doing well. Okay. Okay, so now that we've got our content, what is this going to look like? Well, we need to pick one of our software items to design it for the format, right? So you want to decide, do you want to use Google Drawings? Do you want to use Canvas, et cetera, et cetera. I like for mine to do it in Google Drawings because I can change the size, and I'm going to show you a screenshot shortly, to 11 by 8.5 so I can print them off on my printer at home. Once I've gone through the chat mats with a couple of iterations, and then I can laminate those or put those in cute little plastic sleeves and reuse them year after year. And that way I can tell my kids, okay, we're going to do a small group discussion. You need to put your computers completely away, and then give them the chat mats. So they have some technology free time. Your design, you're going to see in a moment, like you saw in the French ones previously, you're going to include shapes to make little boxes for the questions and the response frames. You'll use the bucket fill in order to change the colors and the shape outlines so that you can separate each of the question parts. And then as you're looking at this slide in the presentation itself, you can see that I've alternated the text in black and blue. And I learned that from a different workshop, but I think it works pretty well that when you're looking at it with the 2 different colors, it's easier to see where you are on the page and to break up what section you're working on. So that's just a little tip to keep in mind. And then once you have your design down of all of your frames, right, and you've put your questions in, then you're going to go into Flat Icon and you're going to look for your visuals. Just something that might not give them an answer, but prompts them on different ideas. And I'll show you an example momentarily. If you don't see an icon you like, obviously you can use Google Images, or you can use any AI image generator to create an image that maybe you want. And I've got a link to a couple of those in the bonus slide. Okay, so here in a moment, I'm just going to walk you through this visually, and then we're going to have playtime, but let's start at the beginning here. So you've got your content, you've got your questions, right? So you're going to go into your Google Drive, you're going to open Google Drawings. So it has a little bit of a different icon there. You're going to go to File and drop down into Page Setup, and then you're going to change it from its preset ratio to custom and do 11 by 8.5 if you want to make it the same size as a sheet of paper. Once you're there, then you can either go insert shapes, or you can go to this cute little icon on the bar and drop it down in order to insert some shapes. One of my favorites is the rounded corner square rectangle. Also, callouts are kind of fun as well. So once you insert some shapes, so you can see that, like, here's an example of the Google Drawings. So I've inserted those rounded squares, and I started to put some typing here. So obviously the question is going to go in the highlighted color. The sentence frames are going to go in that kind of more transparent colored box below. And then you'll see the images momentarily in the white space below that. So to kind of really separate this section all I've done is gone up to bucket fill for the highlighted blue color, and then used the outline button here in order to change the outlines here to either a different color, and you can also change it to a different width. Okay, so once your boxes are put in there, and then you can just make copies of them. So for example, let's say like that same box, I put in the question, what would you include in a modern New Deal to restore prosperity to the US? And then in the response frame, they didn't use the exact same vocabulary. So the student could say, to improve American society, I would. And then we've just given them some visuals that they might think about, you know, something pertaining to the environment or healthcare, housing, food chain, etc. So it kind of prompts them for some ideas, but doesn't give them exactly what to say, right? So to find these icons, you're going to open up flaticon.com. You can do stable icons, you can do little dancing icons, that's totally up to you. You're going to type in whatever concept you're looking for. Here I wanted something that was going to represent a deal for the New Deal. And then hit obviously search. The images came up over here, and once I found one I liked, I'm going to click on it so that this middle icon appears for the image. Looks like a little photo. And then once you click on this photo, you're going to choose the PNG. Anything that's yellow you have to pay for, but anything that's not yellow is free. So I'm going to choose the PNG, and it will allow me to copy the image over, and then I can go back into my Google Drawing and paste it. So it's just that simple. Okay. All right. And so let's look at just a couple of other ideas here that aren't French in this one. All right. Make sure you can see. Yay. All right, so I know the math department does complex instruction, and if it will load all the way, thinking, it's going. No, it's not. Maybe it will. Oh, yay. Okay. All right. So here's the team task from the task card shared with me from one of my math colleagues. And the question was, if a genie appeared and gave you a choice, what would you choose? Would you rather have a penny a day, a penny today that doubled every day for 30 days, or $1 million straight away today? And then their task is divided into 4 parts. To answer this question, they need to create a table, and then create a graph, and then come up with the equation, and then come up with an application scenario. So to help them through this group conversation, I actually used Bing Copilot to create some questions. So there's some questions. I know it's really small here, but when you open it up yourself, you'll be able to enlarge it, but roll with me for just a second. So you've got the table, and these are the couple of questions to get them to start to analyze and create the table, some sentence starters to discuss the table and what should be in the table, just a few icons, not the answers. Same thing with the graph and their observations about trends in the graph, and then creating their formula. What do they notice? So again, it's kind of giving them an indication, but not the exact answer. And then here they need to take this and they need to apply it to the real world. So they're going to definitely have to think about time and the balance of the two, balancing out and analyzing the two different tables and equations. So as you can see, it's just like a little bit of an addition that would go with a task card that would give them some more framework in order to talk them through a little bit in order to be able to do these 4 tasks. So that's one way that you could use it. And then I'll just give you a couple more suggestions, and then we're going to play. Yay. Okay, so while the icons load here, this one is a history one. So it's getting the students to talk about the US involvement in World War II. So again, it's starting with I had AI come up with the 3 different levels using Costa's levels of inquiry. So at first, they're just going to identify major events that led the US to enter World War II. In the middle, how did the US do propaganda play in that? So again, they could talk about, the newsreels and the propaganda at the beginning of movies. They could talk about rations. They could talk about gender roles with Rosie the Riveter, kind of sparking some of those ideas. And then applying it to it maybe a little bit of a different situation. This question is asking them to consider their ethics. So how would you have handled the ethical dilemmas faced by US leaders, such as the decision to drop the atomic bomb? So they've got their answer frame. So they could talk about the atomic bomb. They might talk about choice of when to use soldiers and when not. How do you create peace after such a brutal conflict? And they can add other ideas. So it's just really giving them some ideas to spark conversation if they get a little lost. Okay, so let me come back to the presentation. All right, and then if you're interested, there's one for English, Analyzing Animal Farm. The French one's back in there, and by tomorrow I will have one for Avid tutorial and one for science on cooking chemistry. So you can see that they're, I think that they're very beneficial no matter what subject you're teaching, not just world language. Okay, we're ready to play. All right, so on slide 18, I've given you the templates of just the boxes on Google Drawings. So if you click these, it should create a copy for you. So you're not editing the master version, it's totally fine. But you may just want to save it to wherever you'd like to find it in your Google Drive. And so I've given you the vertical one that includes a lot more images. Okay, and then you can take out these boxes or expand them. You can, however you'd like to do that. Okay, and then you have a horizontal one that's similar. And then I've also shared this one with you if you'd like to change it, if you have a little bit more, you'd like them to put the syntax together, or you'd like to have reminder questions. That's something that might be engaging that needs a little more word as opposed to visuals. But you could still see the icons in order to separate the sections of the boxes so they can find what they're needing more readily on one sheet of paper or a slide. Okay, all right. I am going to start the timer, but before I do that, all right, I just want to show you a couple more things while you're playing. Thinking of your content, ready to go on your templates here. We'll come back to that one. The very last slide, slide 20, I'm going to give you a couple of bonus things. So if you're looking for your content standards, it's linked there. If you need more questions, such as questions like for Socratic dialogue, it's there. If you want to play around with an AI chatbot in order for it to create the questions and response frames for you, fabulous. They're linked there. If you would like to use flat icon, awesome. If not, there's links to Google Images and Bing Designer. To finish out this particular concept, I have not yet created, I know the next question might be, well, how do you grade? That's great that once you get them trained on how to use it and they have this fabulous productive conversation, they need a grade for it. I would suggest using, Magic School or Bing Copilot or ChatGPT and put in the criteria and create a peer evaluation rubric so that they are grading each other. And so that then your really role is to walk around and make sure they're staying on task and listening to the types of responses, but you don't have to be marking every single kid with your rubric all the time, right? I would also ask them towards the end, once they've used your rubric, to have them evaluate it. Maybe you create a cute little short Google form where they can rate how effective they thought it was in having this productive chat, or recommend maybe changes that they would like or what would have helped. And then they can also use the mat in their discussion. You can have them summarize it into a paragraph. And then last but not least, or probably before we put it in place, I will probably talk to the class about doing your discussion norms, right? My kids, they're juniors and seniors. They have forgotten how to greet each other when they sit down to have a conversation. Reminding them they need to put their phones away, they're making eye contact, how to demonstrate active listening. Some of those skills they just need some brushing up on, and turn taking. So there's just some bonus resources for some jumping off points. All right, so I have been talking at you for half an hour. All right, so I would like to open it up to questions. Otherwise, and then so you can unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can throw them in the chat. Otherwise, let me go back here. All right. I'll give us about half an hour. Yeah, because it's about 3 o'clock right now on the timer. And then just a couple moments before the end, I will put the URL in for the feedback form. Okay. All right. No, there you go. All right. All right. So as you're starting to open things up, opening up your Google Drawing templates, thinking about some questions. As you have questions for me, again, feel free during the next half an hour to just unmute yourself or to type it in the chat. Ooh, awesome. Okay, so while you're working, I'm just going to answer the question in the chat here. Jessica has asked, how do you go about introducing this to students for the very first time to ensure that they're able to participate and get the most out of an activity like this? So for me, I told them that they're used to having small group discussions and, numbering off 1 through 4, putting them in their groups. And moving and then telling them to clear off their desks, obviously. And I told them that, yeah, we need to since I teach French and Jessica, I know you teach Spanish, to letting them know that the concepts that we cover at the lower levels, they're going to still keep covering at the upper levels. So we need to keep practicing how to introduce some of the basics that they would encounter, especially in like their interviews going into like OPI for their senior year for seal of biliteracy, but also for having conversations back and forth. It's good practice for the AP exam. So it's encouraging the students that, hey, we're preparing you for the AP test all the way along here. We're not just going to throw you in the deep end of the water the last year. So they get the buy-in for the importance, split them into groups. I pass out a chat mat sheet to each student to begin with. And we look at it first, right? I show them the content of the questions and the structure of it. And then I usually say, the person, however you conduct your group, small groups, like, I don't know, the person with the closest birthday to today, they go first. And so that's why you need at least 3 questions, if not 4 or more. But they start for me from the left side of the chat mat, and one person will read the question, the next person will answer, the next person will add on to that or ask a clarification question. So we model that with one of the groups. And then they get the hang of it. And then I set the timer and tell them, okay, I'm going to be walking around while you engage and get ready, because I'm going to be asking you questions as well as I'm walking around and listening. So they get the hang of it pretty quickly. So I hope that answered your question. Hi. Hi, Cara. I just saw your message in the chat. So where can we find pictures of the student groups? Do you mean the pictures that are in the Google Slides? Okay. I created those out of Bing Image Creator. Let me see if I can drop the link to Bing Image Creator in the chat, but also the prompt that I put in for it to create it. Give me one moment to go over and I'll see if I can put it in the chat. Many thanks. All right, everyone. I know that was a little less than 30 minutes, but I do want to honor your time. We are now at 3:26, and so I just wanted to let you know, if you're working in the slides, on slide 19, there's a direct link there to the evaluation form. If not, if you're over back in Google Meets, I have pinned the evaluation link in the chat. If you would just take a few moments to fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. And I just wanted to thank you for your time and attention, and I hope that you got something useful out of the session. And I'm here to answer any final questions that you may have. All right, it's currently 3:30, so I'm going to go ahead and close the session. Thank you so much for attending. Have the great rest of your summer.